Back to the story. Jeanette Hill for the News for Scotland team recently had a talk with Dr Tony Lawson, who's in the middle of research into a tax not on income but on wealth. And here's Jeanette's interview.
Hello folks, today I'm going to talk to Dr Tony Lawson and I'm going to talk to him about the possibility of wealth tax. Dr Tony Lawson, hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us here in the studio, and your experience is in microsimulations, is that right? Do you want to tell us what they are?
It's a computer simulation method that represents every individual or whatever entity is modelled in a population.
Great, and so you have done microsimulations on crime and on household budgets, etc. And now you're working on one to look at a wealth tax, is that right?
Yeah, that's my current interest in wealth taxes, yeah.
And why is that? I mean, obviously I've heard about income tax and everybody goes on about Scotland having some say in its income tax policies. But why are you interested in wealth tax and how is that different from income tax?
For one thing, the amount of inequality between wealth and income is 10 times. So wealth inequality is 10 times as much as income inequality.
Has the EU been interested in wealth tax?
The EU's proposed up to a 2% tax on wealth for people with over €1 million.
So it's not to do with how much you earn, it's to do with how much you have, is that right?
Yeah, it's total amount of capital with the debts subtracted. So net wealth is the thing.
So how would a wealth tax work?
At the end of each year, possibly people could declare the wealth taxes, or alternatively, there's new rules from 2021 where banks share information on money transfers and holdings. So it could be done automatically through the bank system.
Now, when you say there's new rules, is this in the EU?
It's worldwide agreement.
Worldwide, right, great. So I think that was what the EU proposed, wasn't it? That this had to be a worldwide thing, otherwise it wouldn't work. Is that right? Because people with money move their money about the world.
Wealth taxes can be done independently for each individual country, but it's much better if countries work together to avoid people moving their wealth, to avoid wealth taxes.
And did the STUC say something about wealth tax recently?
They did a report about a year ago, and it's been taken up by the Scottish Government, and Hams Yousif has had some interest in pursuing the idea of wealth tax based on the STUC ideas. It could earn up to £1.4 billion in Scotland, and again, the process is up to a 2% tax on people with wealth of over $1 million.
A lot of wealth, and it's only 2%. It's not exactly asking a lot, is it? Yeah, it's producing a lot of money for us to use.
They're very small percentages compared to the income tax percentages, like 40% compared to 2-3%.
And the work that you're doing, what is it leading towards? What is it looking like? What's a method that you're finding?
Most research on wealth taxes is interested in the amount of revenue it would generate. Yeah. But I want to find out what it would do to the distribution of wealth in future years over the long term.
So looking towards sort of like just changing inequality, challenging inequality.
Yeah, I'm not interested in the revenue. I'm interested in what it does to the distribution of wealth, i.e. inequality.
And how do you think it might help that? Hard question, I know.
In theory, if the wealth tax is large enough, you could guarantee that it would create a more equal society. I'm trying to find out what's the lowest percentage wealth tax that would have a positive effect on inequality.
So keeping that wealth tax low so that we get people to, comply with it, is that what you're thinking?
It's not so much about compliance, it's a justification. It's just a few percent, like the 2, 3, 4% that's been talked about, it's hard to argue against such a low percentage rate. If it turns out to be 30-40% of wealth, then that's more difficult to justify. Yeah,
but that would bring in an awful lot of money for Scotland, wouldn't it? We'd be able to solve our health and social care crisis with that money, wouldn't we, really?
Exactly, there's no shortage of money. There's plenty of money about it. It's distributed it's all concentrated in a few places.
Yeah. So you're sort of arguing it's really more about wealth than income.
Income tax is a tax on work, which is a laudable activity. Personally, I think income tax should be decreased. That should be more than offset by the tax on wealth.
Yeah.
There's money that doesn't necessarily do anything.
Yeah.
It just sits about.
I mean, personally, as a income taxpayer, I really don't mind paying income tax because I'm happy with what I get for it. Free prescriptions, kids get free education at university, they get support in colleges, etc. I'm quite happy with how Scotland spends its income tax. But yeah, I would welcome a wealth tax because then we could have considerably more money to spend on our infrastructures. Yeah.
Current taxes on wealth are something like capital gains,
Yeah.
or tax on houses, property taxes,
Yeah.
which are much lower percentage than the higher rate of income tax.
Right. Yeah.
But it's poorer working people that pay those higher rates of tax. Rich people tend to pay their taxes through capital taxes, which are much lower as a percentage.
And instead of, say, cutting budgets to people with disability, as the current Westminster government is talking about, a much better option would be to look at, in fact, actually, Rishi Sunak right now is cutting taxes to the wealthy, isn't he?
It's proposed in the autumn statement upcoming soon.
Well, thanks very much for talking to us, Dr. Lawson, and I'm hoping your research continues and that you're going to produce an academic report on this work. Yes.
Thanks, Jeanette. We now know Chancellor Hunt decided not to cut inheritance tax.